Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Just so you know, if it doesn't work, it is not my fault.
Are you the lone tech guy today?
There's only really two people that run all the equipment. It's Scott and I.
Yeah, I'm the last person you want to ask when it comes to this. So.
Yeah. If it fails, it's truly I've done everything in my power. Testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, there you go. All right, good deal.
It works now.
Just got to remember to unmute the mics. If it fails, it's truly I've done everything in my power. Testing. All right, there you go.
No, I got all that.
I'm still
And this
looking.
was the clearest.
Then it had your work session, and I just saw the agenda.
Now that we're getting ready to start.
Just a work session.
This is,
I had learned more about these
I
THC
like all
products.
this other stuff, you
No, I had to chase down some of that.
You're the master.
Like
No,
I'm trying to avoid it.
this stuff.
it's a good thing we're doing the point I'm getting at. 'Cause
That's not
we're having
it.
trouble with people taking them in a different way. You know, 'cause they can't take
And the only thing with
alcohol and
profit.
stuff.
Yeah.
So they take these products.
It should, the way that the system,
And they're
I'll show you.
supplements.
That's all.
The way the system's, I have
but that's not on this.
audio backup,
Yeah.
just in case. This system streams both to our online website and in theory YouTube at the same time.
Talked to some law enforcement
Um,
people.
It's
And then as long as I don't close out this screen, it all works.
They're not consistent ways to test for it. So
Yeah, great. All right, we have legal representation. I feel good, because I got a question there too.
Chairman, we're just waiting for your first presenter to return.
Well, actually, I was too, so. I don't know why he left us, but I'm sure he has a good reason. By the way, Ms. Buckler, thank you very much for these for everyone. Appreciate that. Everyone has now a printed copy of the bylaws for your light reading and study.
That's the final word, not, you'll not change it.
This is the adopted version as of 2025, but everything's subject to change.
I
Everything.
thought maybe it was, the work session was to change them.
Oh, no. This is the current version. It's just a matter of getting a printed copy out to everyone.
How you doing?
What about yourself?
Wonderful. Then I got
Put it on the back of my head.
All right. All right, I'd like to call the March work session for Louisa County Planning Commission to order. Going to start tonight's business with retail sales of controlled substances. And Mr. Kuhn, can you give us a tee-up on this, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, what we had talked about last meeting was just the concept of retail sale of a controlled substance is not something that we differentiate between other retail uses in the county. And this is something that we think we should get ahead of and making sure that we do treat it differently. So we worked on a definition that you all have in front of you. And then what we also have worked on is based on the different zoning districts, we had provided a recommendation of which one should be allowed with a CUP, and then kind of just note on the side of it as to our reasoning. So for example, A1 and A2 within or out of a growth area, it still doesn't fit just because there's limited commercial capability, and not allowing this type of use in that zoning district would help protect the rural character of the county. So of course, if you go down, you'll see C1 and C2 in the growth area or out of a growth area. We'd recommend requiring a CUP. It's limited commercial intensity, and then the CUP would allow to review neighborhood impacts. C2 is designated for high excess general commercial. So I did put a star next to C2 that if we're going to allow a by right use, I would suggest the C2, or probably the C2 in a growth area, would be the most likely area for it to be allowed by right based on definition. And then IND, it's industrial focused. It's retail's not really appropriate for those zoning districts. And then RD, same thing, control compatibility with the total resort. And then PUD, same thing, if based on the master plan, if they've got a whole concept that it fits in, great. But if it doesn't, it's just something that until it's before you, you wouldn't really, So that's kind of what we have in front of you. And I did have one question. We did exclude alcohol and tobacco, and then we included agricultural activity passive. And I remember it was a good idea initially, but I cannot recall, and I don't have it in my notes why we added it, but I do know that that was added. So just in the definition, it does say an activity devoted to bona fide production of crops, including the production of fruits, vegetables of all kinds, nuts, tobacco or floral products, or the production and harvest products of silviculture activity. I don't know if we need it, and I'd have to go back and see if I had specifically added it in there, but I don't know if I have a specific note about it, because I do know, we're talking about the retail sale, so,
Yeah.
and honestly, I don't remember to save the life of me why we had included in there, because there are some ancillary uses that, ag uses are given, but I don't know if these would cross. So even if we wanted to update the definition to say it excludes alcohol and tobacco, just period.
Part of my recollection of the meeting was that we were dealing with things like farm stands and that sort of thing, or roadside stand, or something that might have been under agricultural operation. But as I read, we didn't have the definition of agricultural activity passive in front of us at the time, I don't think. I can't recall. But as I read that appears to be specific to production of, and we're regulating sale of. Mm-hmm. So it looks to me like it's two different pieces, and this probably would not apply because I don't think there's anything under agricultural activity that has to do with sale of from the standpoint of roadside stand or farm stand or something of that nature, the way I read it. Now, I may not be reading it right, but you see down in agricultural operation, you have farm stand and wayside stand and those things. So that's once
Might
again.
just be agricultural operation and should not be the activity passive.
But the question is, if you do that, are you, and what I thought we were attempting to do in terms of regulation was not allow the loophole for a farm stand if we have somebody raising controlled substance that however much is legally allowed and then selling it from a farm stand. So it was trying to close that piece so that it would, and I don't know if A1 or A2 prohibition would do that as well. It may or may not. But you're not able to have an agricultural operation in anything but A1 and A2 without, I guess you can do it with a CUP. I can't recall. We did an A2 with a CUP in R2, I think it was, down
West Mountain Road.
further down off of Gum Spring, up in that area. Owens Creek, there we go. We did it there. So I think maybe we would need more of a, and the idea behind exempting or excluding alcohol and tobacco here was to not put an undue burden on grocery stores and that sort of thing. So, I'm not sure we need anything other than that exclusion. I don't know. Is there any other controlled substance that we'd be concerned about that, aside from alcohol and tobacco, that would not be a part of what we're trying to do right now that's currently sold? Yeah. Just can't think of it.
That's in there. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But I guess based on the definition, other than the last couple words, which we'll try and tighten up and get the reasoning behind that, because I'll have to update y'all on that. I just unfortunately didn't get a chance to review that email till today.
It's
So
okay.
that was, I
It's
just
okay.
didn't have enough time to dig into it.
Yeah.
But at least on face value, the other commissioners that are looking at the definition, is there any questions or concerns about the definition, or any thoughts about the chart as well, where the suggestion of allowing it by CUP, or should we talk about having it by right in C2 or C2 in a growth area, or just go, what would end up happening is if planning commission is ready to move forward, we could advertise for public hearing, and then this is the basis that essentially we would use to move forward with that. So if there's any comments or questions, now would be a good time.
Ms. Brooks?
What's, right now, pharmacy is allowed in what zoning district, C2? Or, and I guess the reason I'm asking, what others allowed in now? Because of another substance is coming out, we're putting undue burden on them now.
If they're already established, they wouldn't have to go get a CUP because they're already in operation. And this also wouldn't affect any of the town of Mineral or the town of Louisa.
But anybody new coming in would have
Anybody
to-
new would need to go through this, yes, sir.
Yeah, we did have a long discussion about that and about how do you capture what you're trying to capture and not affect these other things that can sell this sort of thing. Is it possible to break it apart? And it was a really difficult thing to do. But there are ways to require pharmacies, that sort of thing, to go through the process and then remove some of the burdens in the approval.
Is the
So,
pharmacy controlled by DEA or what? Who are they?
Normally DEA is the one who licenses the sale or the prescription medication or the narcotics. That's the DEA license is what your primary care physician and normally the pharmacists have to have a DEA license as well to fill those prescriptions and handle them. So it's normally the agency that deals with it.
So it's already governing body of the pharmacy now, which is the DEA, to sell controlled substance. It looks like to me if it's a pharmacy that's governed by the DEA, how can we say, now we've got this new regulation, that they're already controlled by the DEA?
So, well, we're not controlling their operation. We're just controlling where they can.
Do it at.
Correct. It's the same thing that, pharmacy can't open in Blue Ridge Shores. It's the same concept. It's just where is an appropriate use for a pharmacy. Is an R2 district a reasonable place to have a pharmacy, or should it be C1 or C2? It's same thing. If it's, general store or just a general retail store like a Dollar General, it might be more appropriate to have in a little bit more residential area than a pharmacy. So it's just differentiating.
So the main thing we're doing is adding a CUP to what they already have to do now.
Well, essentially defining it just because it's a higher level of intensity than a normal retail shop, and we just don't differentiate right now. So we're just differentiating, saying this is a more intensive use, and as such, we just need to make sure that we address it correctly.
Okay, thank you.
And we don't define pharmacy, so.
one other thing, under your zoning districts here, since we have a new one, and I don't know if this applies or not, but do we need to add the TOD? Because
No.
it is a zoning district. of
It is not a
sorts. It's
zoning district.
Oh, it's an overlay.
It's an overlay district. This would not apply. It's got its own ordinance.
All right, fine. I know you've got the overlays for the other ones, but I guess
Yeah, well-
overlay covers it all, so we're done.
Yeah, the growth
Yep,
area
never
overlay
mind.
is, they've got their own zoning district
right.
designation.
Just clarifying.
Yes, sir. And Commissioner Brooks, we actually don't have pharmacy defined
Oh, we don't.
at all, so no. So that would be, it would end up being up to Linda, depending on, if it was a CVS or Walgreens or something wanted to come in, she'd have to look at the established definitions to try and figure out where it should be approved. So that's just something that,
Is it under drugstore?
Probably been under one of the definitions for retail sales. If we had, or
something else to deal with.
Does anyone have any further questions for Mr. Kuhn about the language?
I just think we're ready for public hearing on it.
I was gonna ask if the commission felt like this wording was ready for consideration.
I will provide the update on the agricultural activity passive, or if that needs to be amended prior to us doing the advertisement. Because I remember, we had the conversation. I gotta dig in my notes and figure out why I put it that way.
Understand, it just, and if it's not something that really is in effect, we just strike that and make it alcohol and tobacco, and we're done. So, yeah. Yeah, very well then. So, Ms. Smith, because I don't do this often, am I looking for a motion at this point to move this to public hearing? Yes, very well, I thought so. Then the chair would entertain a motion to move this language to public hearing at the April meeting.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Eglin, any further discussion on that? Very well. Mr. Eglin, can we have a voice vote, please?
Absolutely, Chairman. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well. All right. Motion passes. We will move this forward to public hearing in the April meeting. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. We appreciate that work on that. Next up is proffered discussion. And Ms. Smith, did you have anything further for us aside from what's in the package on proffers to present?
Only thing I did want to give you all that you don't have is to let you know that in terms of cash proffers, Louisa County qualifies as a locality that is authorized to accept cash proffers, and I'll show you because we're a high growth district. And so if you all need the chart, I can show you that, but that shows that. Does anyone want it? They can have it, but other than that, and the code section, that's the only thing I have additional.
Well, does anybody want a copy? I wouldn't mind having a copy, if anybody wants one. Thank you. Mr. Kuhn?
And then just so you all know, what's in your agenda packet, this is something that we're gonna go ahead and laminate and have before you, because there's a difference between the proffer and the condition of approval. So if we're dealing with the CUP, it's a condition of approval, which is supposed to directly link to the impact of that. If it's a residential development or it's that direct impact of that. Similar to the proffer, but the proffer is normally during a rezoning and it's voluntary from the applicant. So there are some slight distinctions, because this is something that I know Planning Commission has done, where there'll be a CUP before you all and there's a crux that you are like, the only way I can approve it is if they were to move the entrance 150 feet to coincide with, somebody else's entrance. If it's a CUP, a condition of approval could just be, I move to approve with the condition that they move the entrance 150 feet across from this entrance. It doesn't have to be the back and forth with the applicant to try and get them to voluntarily move the entrance. So that's a big distinction between a CUP or special exception and a rezoning. And that's one of these why we had, the legal framework and the voluntary applicability, so you all can have it and reference it that, okay, is this a CUP that's in front of us, or is it a rezoning? And a big question I think that you all will want to have this for and probably yield to the attorney for is if it was a rezoning and CUP. We have to differentiate if the condition of approval is on the CUP, where a proffer would have to come from the rezoning. So if we're doing it at the same time, we have to be very careful with the wording in the motion. But of course, the attorney can assist with that. So I know there's been a couple times Planning Commission's got wrapped around the axle about something where if it's a CUP, you don't need to. move to approve with this condition of approval, and you're done. Goes on to the board. And if the applicant says, well, I'm not going to do that, well, you have an approved CUP if you abide by these conditions. If you don't, you can't do it. It'll be a violation. So that's something that I do think is important, just a distinction that Planning Commission knows as we move forward.
Very good, thank you
Yep.
for that. And thank you, Ms. Smith, for all the work. There's a lot of work that went in pulling all this together. We appreciate it very much, because this is a question that it's good to get the final understanding. I'm just sorry Commissioner Quarles wasn't here tonight, since he asked the original question to get the final answer on, but thanks to him as well for pursuing it also. Any further questions on proffers? Mr. Brooks?
One question that's come up a lot of times that is going under CUPs, depending on the language of the approval, it may be project specific and not always transferable to future property owners. Have you got a for instance on that where we've approved a CUP that did not go with future property owners? What would be an example of that?
Let's say it was a special occasion facility. They wanted to get a CUP for a special occasion facility, and they said that they would limit hours of operation of the special occasion facility between 9 in the morning and 8 o'clock at night. But the special occasion facility never got off the ground, and they sold it, and it's an operational farm. That CUP is not going to transfer to the new owner unless they wanted to, operate the special occasion facility, but that's just off the top of my head. It's certain ones that are very specific.
I guess that Rumpus and Bumpus, or whatever it's called, that's sort of a temporary CUP.
And every year we've got to deal with it, that they submit stuff to.
Because it's a CUP for that year, and they have to come back the next year, or whatever we said in it.
So then if Kinetic Multisport were to be bought by different vendor or whatever, they wouldn't, it doesn't get transferred automatically.
Right.
So there are situations that in part of the condition of approval, if it were to be worded in such a way that you would limit it to, hours of operations have to be limited for this type of use.
Otherwise, it goes with the property.
And it depends on what it is. If it's for changing the entrance of the property, well, if they're going to do anything on that property, this is where the entrance needs to be. So there's some that would automatically be transferable, but depending on the situation, that's one where, the attorney would probably help. And we want to make sure that this is, if they're going to just get the plan and sell it to somebody else, we want to make sure that, the end user is going to be the one to have to abide by this. We can make sure that the conditions are worded in such a way to address that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I do think it would be really important, as we have the discussion on each one of these in the future, that we clarify which one it is, whether it's permanent with the title, or whether it is just for the use or whatever. So we just need to make sure we clarify that each time.
All the applicants that come before you, if it's a rezoning, it starts out REZ. So if it's REZ,
Yeah, but this is under CUP side, right? Under second bullet, under applicability, it may be project-specific and not always transferable.
So that's just depending on what the condition of approval is that you all come up with?
That's what I'm saying. That particular, when we have one of those conditions we're going to apply, we need to clearly state whether this is going to be just for this use, or is this going to be permanent? So
unless they come back and amend the CUP to remove the allowable uses and the conditions and all that. But
yeah, we just need to make sure we all understand what we're talking about when we're talking about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anyone else? Very good. Well, thank you. All right. Next up, focus area plans. I feel like it's the November meeting. 2 years ago. Mr. Evans, please.
So, good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. You'll see on page 3 of your work session packet, the bottom paragraph of so back in 2024, I met with many of you to go over the focus areas and creating a draft. for discussion purposes, which we're going to do tonight. And staff is here to work with you on any necessary additions or modifications to those drafts. And what these plans came out of originally in 2019, we adopted the 2040 comprehensive plan. And then staff was tasked in 2020 before COVID really broke out to work on these plans. And imagine the comprehensive plan is basically a giant meat cleaver of guidance, and then your focus areas can be your scalpel. So you can put things in the focus areas to explain to developers what you are looking for when you get applications in those areas to guide them for that growth. And because we'll start with the Gum Springs growth area, but what we want in Gum Springs might be totally different from what we want in the Gordonsville growth area, for example. And so I just want to tee us up with that thought process. And so you have on your packet, the Gum Springs area, it starts with packet page 4. In order to talk about the focus areas, we're probably going to also speak about the future land use map, which designates parts of the growth area as either pink mixed use, a yellowish orange is your low density residential, and gray is industrial. And in the Gum Springs growth area, for example, we have no gray industrial. And if it's not one of those 3 categories, it's considered rural. You can see in the case of the Gum Springs growth area, which I can enhance on our GIS map if we need be, and I might just do that here. A majority of it's pretty much split 50-50 between low-density residential and mixed use. And if you all will remember, recently we had a Love's Truck Stop application that came through in this area. And we looked at the comprehensive plan at that time to determine, did it fall within the definition of the 2040 comprehensive plan for mixed use. And so, again, hand in hand, part of the conversation might be, is the future land use map appropriate for this area? And in the pink mixed use areas, what type of businesses, what type of guidance are we looking for to give to the developer? The low density residential area, the orange yellow area, the county is basically saying at this time that that's an area we expect low density residential growth to be in. So I leave it up to y'all based off of page number 5 of your staff packet where we talk about character. That's probably a good place to start off with is we have things listed such as promote small-scale mixed-use commercial development as opposed to a large commercial developer. Promote shared driveways and interparcel connectivity. Promote agritourism. And avoid commercial strip development layouts that encourage development design and creates a sense of place and community. Because this exit, as we're all aware, we'll probably see development pressure in the coming decades as the Richmond area expands further to the west. And it's also a pretty good gateway for those that are living in both Goochland and Louisa to travel to Richmond for work or for other things. Any comments, questions, recommendations, or I have the map and GIS and everything ready to go.
Mr. Barlow.
One of the things we keep running into, promote shared driveways. When you speak of shared driveways, what are you referring to?
So it's mainly from a commercial standpoint or industrial standpoint, is that if you're going to have, I'll zoom on down here. So I'm just going to pick a random parcel, assuming that these are zoned commercial and you have perhaps a medical office that applies at this parcel here. It would be good for their development to leave T hammerhead on either side of their site plan to allow for them to connect to a future commercial user that might make sense to do that. It doesn't always make sense, and obviously topography and drain field and other things get in the way of that, but that's what that's meant by shared driveway. It's not necessarily from one use or another, but commercial industrial thought.
I think it makes perfect sense in commercial and industrial driveways where, and if that was clear, I wouldn't have any issue with it at all. It's where it gets applied is residential houses. And what we run into is you have the requirement of a shared driveway, so, and I talk about this all the time, you got one person pulls in that driveway, stops, goes to the mailbox, the next person goes, and they're sitting in the middle of the road. So what I had convinced VDOT before we have our new people here was that you have what we were calling consolidated driveways. In other words, you bring them in close proximity to one another, but they have their individual driveways so that you don't, one, put an easement, which is an encumbrance on both lots, and you have one driveway that even if you, what we've run into is if you make the darn thing wide, you know, to enough to accommodate two vehicles, you still have somebody pull in the middle of it and stop and go to the mailbox. Whereas if you have, you can move the driveways close together, but each one has its own individual driveway, then you alleviate that problem. You don't have to put an easement in for each person to share. So that to me needs some clarification. And if you're putting in a commercial entrance for an industrial or commercial, then, you know, it's more like a street. It makes perfect sense. But I think it needs to be clarified so that that doesn't carry over to individual residential lots. I mean, I ran into this years ago when Goochland tried to come up with a access management plan, which they no longer have because it got so to be such a mess. You have one person put in a driveway and then the next person goes to do something, he's gotta be 600 feet away from it. And it just didn't work. So on that, I would just, I know what problems it can cause. Is some clarification that doesn't apply.
Supervisor Barlow, I've already added to the sentence you see on your screen here, promote promote shared driveways and interparcel connectivity for commercial industrial uses.
That helps a whole lot, I think.
Good.
And you'll kind of see a lot of these character themes play out in a lot of the focus areas we look at this evening, because believe it or not, even though I met with a lot of you individually and some of you together that share boundaries, you all pretty much have the same ideas in mind when it came to looking at the future land use map and what you were trying to get in to focus on in the development of your focus areas that you're responsible for.
So I think that's in several of the others, so can we just carry that over and add that commercial, industrial to all of them?
It'd take me literally 2 minutes to do.
Very good.
So did you all want to talk about anything you were looking for? I guess Supervisor Barlow and Commissioner Brooks, are there certain themes or businesses or uses that you're looking to discuss within the focus area? So when a developer comes to speak with you at a pre-application meeting, you can go, you know, we have our 2040 comprehensive plan, but you really need to look at our focus area to see what we're looking for and we expect from you as a developer.
One thing I want to speak to is, back when we met, the concerns I had was traffic issues and widening of 522, the bridge improvements, and also had concerns about whether at the time it was a truck stop, but if a new developer was coming in, it showed a little difference, distance from 64 to 250 on that stretch of road. It's almost like we need a master plan to align the entrances to it, to avoid what we had going on potentially down there before. And I think John has hit on a lot of it. One of the other things was the non-regional aspect of it. And I think you've done that with under transportation. What you added in there to that is anticipated that additional traffic improvement projects will be needed near the Interstate 64 exit and bridge crossing to address increased traffic of the growth area. Future development near the interstate should contribute toward transportation solutions. I think you nailed that right there.
Thank you.
That tells them what is to be expected. I guess I'm asking on the alignment of entrances or access across, lining up 522, that doesn't promote shared driveways, doesn't necessarily address that, but I'm guessing that last part of that statement, it's additional traffic improvements may be made, but in most cases, I feel like we need to address the alignment of access to the property to try to coordinate the traffic issue.
I agree. Oftentimes, when a developer comes to reach out to community development department, there's usually nothing around them. And so obviously we talk to them about making sure that, and they're usually very receptive because they want people to share and go from one parcel to another because it helps their business if that corridor becomes successful. It is a bit challenging, especially if the user on the left or right-hand side, if they reach out to them, they don't have a plan of what they want to do.
Right.
It's one of those things where I believe it's kind of interesting that we talked about proffers and conditions before we moved into this segment, is that if a user comes to us with a conditional use permit or rezoning, we could ask them to either voluntarily proffer or condition that they will, if they share an entrance or decide to interconnect with another industrial commercial user, that they do it in a manner that's amicable between the users with an easement, or however they're going to do that. And so that way, if you have two individual users and neither of them want to connect, you can say, well, there's a condition that requires it. So that's something that we could tackle through a rezoning or conditional use permit. But unless we update our code, all we could do is add a little more language to this focus area plan saying that you could go promote shared driveways and interparcel connectivity between industrial and commercial users. It is expected that developers, through the acquisition and development of their property, set up agreements ahead of time to prepare for. So that's why it's hard to do that if you don't know what the end user is going to be to the left or right of you.
Right. Just, I'm trying to think of something we can say that lets them know what we're looking for when they come to look at the property. And I think you've nailed it under the transportation part.
Okay.
And I guess within that, I don't know if we need to expand on the alignment. What I'm trying to get to is, besides having 20 accesses between 64 and 250, we could have one where you could possibly have a light and access both ways, east and west of 522. But I don't know, we can really get that site specific in here. But I think you've done a good job of hitting the points that I brought up when we got together about regional large-scale development of business should not be encouraged if central water and sewer services are not available. So that would let everybody know what they're looking at when they come in there. I don't know what Mr. Barlow may have to add to that.
No, I think they're all good points. The only thing I'm wondering is, should it say until such time as water and sewer becomes available or something like that? And maybe it can be addressed further down the road, but all of these interchanges ever since they went in, 64, have been our targeted growth areas, Gum Springs included. So if somebody is going to maybe proffer to run water and sewer down to Gum Springs, then I think just having that option in there, that it's, with what Gordon was just saying, if you had, rather than just saying because water and sewer is not available, it'd say that it's not encouraged until such time as water and sewer becomes available.
Staff can make that change.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kersey?
since we're opening that up, is there a desire on the county's behalf to bring water and sewer to that area? We promote a rural county, but yet we take actions that encourage growth. If we bring in water and sewer, it's gonna encourage growth.
It is, as I just said, each one of these interchanges are targeted growth areas. So I would say that at some point in time, yes, it is, each one of these interchanges is targeted for growth.
But we do have an agricultural forestal district that is adjacent to the residential area. I just bring it up as an area of concern. I think we promote growth and we say we want to remain rural. And I don't know that our actions follow through on what we put on paper.
Well, these, I would say, these interchanges have been at targeted growth areas since 64 was put in. And
Well, I do know that Gum Spring and Zion were both considered, and the choice was made to go to Zion
at that time,
at that time. And one of the significant things that Zion was that historic Green Springs basically put a roadblock into anything else. But then we moved and brought water now from, if it ever gets here, from the James River. So we're going to encourage more growth. And that's just the question that I have. It just seems that we run reverse to what we say we want the county to look like.
I would say that we encourage it in those growth areas. And the whole idea is to protect those areas outside of that. So rather than having it sporadic all over the county, you put it where you have the infrastructure. So eventually, water and sewer will, I'm sure, come to Gum Springs at some point in time.
Does anybody have any more comments on Gum Springs before we move down the interstate?
I think it hit all my points
Thank you, Commissioner.
with the district changes that was brought up. by
Yes.
Tom and John.
So I guess before we go further down, are there any general questions about the information in front of you, or do you want to continue to move one growth area to another?
Does anyone have any general questions? I guess we're going to move along growth area by growth area then.
So the next one, we have a Shannon Hill focus area. We're all very well aware that this exit is within Goochland County off of 64. And then we have the Shannon Hill Regional Business Park, along with a small strip of mixed use. And then we have a larger swath of low-density residential. There is a resort development in this location, I believe from around the 90s, that has not been developed. It's about 2,000 acres. And going down to the character, we have a lot of the similar characteristics you found in the Gum Springs area.
We do we do spend a lot of time talking about the business park here, but I think right now, I'm going to follow up with Commissioner Kersey. Right now, the greatest threat we have is the low density residential piece, which you say that's about 2,000 acres worth there?
So,
I
I
know-
will pull up the GIS and I can give you a better, view. So this parcel right here is part of Clark Country LLC, which is part of the resort development,
Right.
zoning from, I believe, around the nineties.
Yes.
But the parcels around it, yeah, it's,
Listed as Clark Country, yeah. Mostly.
most of that, the majority of it.
Yeah. But was the entire, were all of the parcels that are listed as Clark Country a part of the 1990s rezoning to RD?
Staff can look into that to verify and bring that information to you the next meeting.
Well,
It's a majority, I would say majority of the
Yeah.
parcels, if not all of them, if my memory serves me right.
yeah, I think that's,
I'm gonna switch on to the zoning layer,
yeah,
so that.
Yep,
Thank
it
you.
is.
And what's interesting is that, so you saw that this green area is actually a band of pink designated mixed use, so
Right.
this is actually all designated, it's zoned agricultural A2.
Mhm.
But if I turn the future land use map on, you'll see that that's pink.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to say about that, since that's already zoned for RD. I think we have, it's good that it's on the edge of the county, but, Spring Creek's on the edge of the county too, and it has driven a lot of things going on around it and within the county as well. So, I'm not sure there's anything can be done about this now at this point, but, it seems to me like it's a threat to the continued, agricultural nature of the county. As I say, I'm glad it's on the periphery of the county, but, that generally find that creates a lot of expectations when people move, and they don't want to drive. I mean, they want to live here, but they want all the amenities that they had before they moved here, and that has to come from somewhere. And as we found with Spring Creek, as nice as that is, all the amenities that Spring Creek provides are not all the amenities that people want when they move here. So they still want what they had before they moved out to the country. So I don't know what to do with that either. I mean, I think that's, I really don't know what to do with that. So I'm not sure that's a beneficial thing to tell you, but it's just a concern.
Happy to take notes.
Well, if somebody else has a great idea, I'm open to hear it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks?
my only comment I had on this was we're locked into what it is.
I'm
It's-
afraid
yeah,
so.
And it's a business park. It's where it is. Clark Country is where it is, and it makes sense for that little piece in between to be mixed use, so
I think so.
kind of, it is what it is.
Although, just out of curiosity, could you go back to the map you had, Mr. Eglin? That pink part that's mixed use there. Oh, I see. I was thinking of it differently. So we have it on either side of 605 right now, which runs down right where the arrow is. But if you want to get further back into those parcels, there's going to have to be some interior roadway to get back in there, because you've got to go down to 250 and back west and come back under 64 to get to the other end of it. So it's not a lot of good road access to all of it. So it's, you know, it's interesting. It almost begs the question, why is all of it still in mixed use? Does it all need to be there since it's not easily accessible by road? I'm not sure that, you know, that if you were, to me, when you do, and I could be wrong, when you do mixed use, any kind of light commercial or stuff like that, right around an area where you're gonna have this kind of residential development in the business park, you want to be able to easily drive from your house to where you're going to get your restaurant or your shop or store or whatever. And if you got to go out to 605 and go south of the interstate to 250 and drive up west and then go back north of the interstate to get back in the other end for 2 or 3, they're probably going to be self-limiting anyway. It's probably not going to be a lot of people wanting to put up any kind of commercial use or whatever out on that end. So it just kind of wonder why we go that far with it. But I don't know. May want to consider making that smaller is all I'm saying.
Continuing to move up the interstate, we're at the Ferncliff growth area. This is a larger growth area. You have your central core at the interstate of 64 that is designated mixed use. You have the Ferncliff Business Park, which is in this area right here. And then you have a large swath of an industrial designation along Route 250. It kind of dies off right before the Shannon Hill exit and continues all the way into the Zion growth area. And then Moss Knuckles Elementary School, Reedy Creek is in this area, designated low-density residential. So going to you, again, you have similar characteristic concepts in this area, several attempts to apply for roundabout at 250 and 208 through the smart scale process. And then there's a little bit more of the conversation I had. Large or regional sized businesses and residential development must mitigate their impact to fire and EMS, sheriff, schools, and general services. Is a new character trait that came out of discussions in this area. The closest fire and EMS and sheriff response is in this building and right across the street. There is a school actually very close near the intersection, but it's a very popular intersection due to the fact that you have a lot of traffic from both Richmond and Charlottesville, and those that are visiting Lake Anna come through that in the summertime. And unfortunately, Commissioner Quarles is not here this evening, so I don't know whether perhaps we want to bring this up at the next meeting as well, or...
With that said, did he have comments that you made additions to this, Tom?
Just that particular characteristic. Could be, I mean, it's a statement that could be shared with the other focus areas, or it could be specific to this one.
Okay. All right.
Yes, and Chris has politely reminded me that I'd be remiss without mentioning that not only do we have the 2040 comprehensive plan currently active, but spring of last year, the Board of Supervisors adopted a public facilities chapter to go along with the 2040 plan, which, you know, if you struck that bullet point down there, you still have your public facilities plan. When someone comes in to apply for a rezoning or a conditional use permit, they need to provide us what they believe their impacts to fire and EMS, sheriff, and schools, those departments, whether it's a small wedding venue or a large planning needed development. So that's something that we are tracking already in our applications and requesting applicants to provide information.
Mr. Eglin, can you comment on the size of the low-density, acreage size of low-density residential portion around that?
So I'm trying to remember back, and Linda might be able to help me, back to 2019. I actually believe this growth area shrank in 2019. If I remember correctly, the growth area actually went further up 208 to around this point. I don't think it shrunk a lot, but I think it kind of morphed a little bit.
Expand that back out just a moment. Like, no, the other way. I'm sorry. Expand it in.
Sure.
We'll get the right terminology here.
So you can see a lot of the green dots, those are addresses, which most likely indicates not all the time that there's a house. And so you have the Reedy Creek subdivision in here, but you also do have a lot of farmland that is designated low-density residential.
Yeah,
I'll turn on the zoning layer as well to help out. So you can see that the purple is the R2, and then everything else, your dark green is your A2, and believe it or not, your light green is your A1. So a lot of the low-density residential in this area that's designated by the future land use map is actually A1.
So if we designate A1 to low-density residential, what are we saying that what are we communicating to people coming in that we want to do there? What kind of density do we want to do there?
We're communicating that we, as opposed to A1 agricultural farming, that we are looking for low-density residential development.
So we're looking to go to R1, or I'm just to get a sense of, because right now with A1 we'd have what, 3 lots in the parent parcel. So what are we communicating?
Point of clarification.
Okay.
The focus areas that we're discussing tonight, most of the information that's before you is just factual based. The future land use map, if we've started having a couple conversations about the future land use map, if we want to amend the future land use map, that's going to need to be a different conversation.
Okay.
Not saying that the questions are irrelevant or not pertinent to what we're talking about, just that's not something that we'd be able to change today before public hearing.
I understand.
The main stuff that we'd be able to change tonight for the focus areas would be when you look at the character, the bullet points that are after it, we want to do the interconnection of the parcels and stuff like that. That's really the stuff that we could change before public hearing. But all the other items, future land use and stuff like that, would take, it'd be a different process, but we could do it.
I understand. It helps me to understand what we're trying to communicate, because I understand what we communicate by this is the zoning, but when we say low-density residential from the standpoint of the map, what kind of density are we trying to communicate out of this parent parcel?
It'd be single-family homes are expected in this general area.
Yeah. How many per parent parcel? Because we've got it helps me to understand, are we talking
So it's
about?
an acre and a half minimum lot size.
All right.
So in a R1, you could assume that it would be 1 home per acre and a half.
Okay, so what we're telling them in low-density residential is we are expecting you to come in with a rezoning to go from whatever agriculture, most likely to either an R1 or an R2.
I mean, I guess if you want to phrase it that way, yes.
Well, I
but
mean,
that's-
if you leave it as A1, they can only get 3 lots out of the parent parcel. So that's not going to,
But a future land use map doesn't have any bearing on what they can come and do. They would still have to rezone it from A1 to.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to get to is, we're telling them we want this to be low-density residential. Well, is low-density residential, is it strictly an acre and a half, and as many as you can jam in for that, or is that high density? Because you got to have at least an acre and a half for anything. So, is it how many houses per square mile, or what? I don't know. What is low density compared to high density compared to whatever? I don't know what it means. Is what I'm saying.
So I don't think I'm going to be able to answer it standing
Well,
at
that's
the
why I was
dais
asking
today.
those people, because that's what they do for a living.
So if the Planning Commission bear with me, I'm going to pull up the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and we can take a look what it says. And I would like to, I had an error here. I did not have the overall transparency cranked all the way up. The light green is actually A2, because the dark green was A1. So I apologize for that.
Well-
Switching between layers there.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm going fast. I know exactly what I'm looking for.
That's right. I took speed reading.
So I'm going to bring up the land use designations from the 2040 comprehensive plan adopted in fall of 2019. And this is low-density residential, single-family detached dwellings at a density of less than one dwelling per 2 acres.
Okay,
And-
thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember that. That's what I was trying to get to. And rural right now, it is not done by density, because we're not really talking about residential and rural.
Yeah, and what we tell, which is exactly how the map shows, that if you're not pink, gray, or orangish yellow, you are rural.
Yeah, yeah. So it's less than 1 per 2 acres. Okay. Good, thank you.
So
Yeah.
moving on to, well, we're gonna jump away from 64 all the way up to the top. We're gonna go into Commissioner Dickerson's world. So we have let me zoom on down here to the Gordonsville growth area.
You didn't get any residential.
So we have far more character bullet points than this particular focus area, and I believe Commissioner Dickerson could probably give us a little information on some of the items that you see here that you don't have in the others, or could possibly be added to the others. One of them would be promoting small town and mixed-use development, supporting walking, biking, and on-street parking, and that being the fact that one would be remiss without saying that we're adjacent to the the town of Gordonsville, which has a pedestrian network already in place.
So since it bumps up to Gordonsville, we're trying to continue that into this area. The one really odd thing when you start looking at the parcels, and I know this isn't totally what we're talking about, you've got a bunch of houses zoned as commercial, right?
Yes, I'm going to pull that up.
People are living in the houses.
So I'm going to go
Just-
remove. So you can see
You have like 30 or 40 houses.
the green dots are your addresses. So you have a strip of pink here that's C2 with many houses on it. And then over here, sorry, that's C1. The pink is C1, and then your orange is yellow is a C2. And you can see the green dots along both sides of Route 15 here. So pink C1, yellow C2. I'll drop down since we're bouncing between so many different colors here.
And then when you're going down Clockner Road, right where those are,
Zone A2 agricultural is the green, and then you have your R1 designations in here as well.
which is Clockner Village, and
And just to switch back to the future land use map, so this R2 area is designated mixed use. This agricultural A2 area is designated as mixed use as well. And then, of course, going down the Spine Road to 15 into the intersection. As you get into the gray, you have RSA, Rapidan Service Authority over here. You have Dominion Energy, Clocker Pentaplast, and some other power users as well. And then, of course, we're familiar with this parcel.
intimately. But I'm not sure, maybe y'all can shed some light of why we did that in the past. When we're there looking at different projects, it really is tough. And that may be another time we might want to go back and address
Yeah.
some of this. We've talked about it for the past 2.5, 3 years.
Probably should be cleaned up.
And, there's a fair amount of industrial rooftop there, so if somebody wants solar, that's why we put the solar on the rooftops that are already there in the parking lots. There's huge parking lots.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we've had solar projects in this district that have come before us. And, that way, if future projects come before you, obviously they have to meet the requirements of the solar ordinance and the new solar siding policy, but you could direct them in a pre-application meeting that, if we're going to have solar, our preference would be to be on top of existing impervious as opposed to on agricultural land or timberland that we have now. And so that's a great example of using the focus area as a scalpel of directing. Even though you have your code as your law, your 2040 comprehensive plan is your guiding document, and this allows even further development guidance for those developers. Happy to add on or take away bullet points.
I'm happy with them. We've gone on quite a bit, but
I think most of that commercial zoning you were seeing was initiated back in '69 when they did the first maps. And they just picked places and the county did it. So it wasn't like that somebody came in and picked these places, wasn't a developer or anything. The county just picked, kind of like we have the growth areas now. They picked where at these interchanges where there was going to be commercial and that type of stuff. Many of those have never turned into commercial or anything, and it would be a cleanup thing, but the county hadn't done it because then you'd be going back, initiating a rezoning that nobody's bothered to fix up, clean up. But that's where these oddball-looking zonings were initiated back in '69 when the first zoning maps were done.
So a treat for you. I've pulled up the 1969 the map, and so this is as far back as our records go for zoning.
There you go.
See if I can put the both of them together here for you. It's going to be a little hard, but I think I can do it. Yes, I'm sorry. I have the future land use map on. Thank you, Linda. Have that strip of C1 commercial in here, some of the C2 you see right in here, and then you have a large swath of industrial over here. And it looks like in that time there's been some R2. There's a little bit of R2 you see in the blue here, but it's kind of developed out a little further. Again, this is an old color map. So. Any other questions? All right. Well, Chairman, we're going to move on into your world. We're going to move to Lake Anna. There you go. Okay. So there's a bit more wording in this one because Lake Anna has a lot going on. We have our North Anna Nuclear Power Plant. There's a lot of tourism in this area. We recently have constructed the Lake Anna Fire and EMS Station. And there was the 522-2A roundabout. They was recently finished and constructed, which was a smart scale project. And so you're going to see a lot of the characteristics that you just witnessed in the Gordonsville growth area. It's really about creating a sense of place. And also there is going to be future commercial development in this area, especially at the roundabout, at 522 and 208. You're going to see you have undeveloped commercial properties, which I can pull up in the zoning here in a second, that are along the 208 corridor heading to the bridge. And so that's why you have some of the trending themes about sharing commercial and industrial driveways, avoiding strip development, and promoting agricultural type businesses and items that would support tourism.
Yeah, we really need in this district to minimize driveway connections as much as possible for future development. There's just so much going on and so much we can have going on. So I like that a lot.
And if y'all remember back in right around 2020, 2021, this is called the Gateway. It's a commercial development that has not been constructed. The backside was designed to be like a cul-de-sac for different carpet, tile for you to build out your houses. You have Cut Along here, which is actively working on this development. Your Food Lion Shopping Center, and again, like I was talking, you have some of these are rezonings within the last 10, 20 years. You're seeing a couple of C1 zone parcels, my hand's hovering over, and then of course you have the plaza down here along with Lake Hanna Resort. And if I zoom out, the zoning, unfortunately, you have your North Anna Nuclear Power Plant, and then you have a lot of R2, which is designated by this purplish blue color. And just to kind of give you a better idea, I'll switch that off and go back to the future land use map. As you see, a lot of the low density residential designation is for those R2, A2, A1. What's left of A2, A1 in this area is zone parcels that are along the lake.
Zoom in just a little bit more to a little bit more than that. Now, hold what you got for a moment. Now slowly travel down the lake towards the southeast. So grab it, and if you're following what I'm saying, yeah, keep going, keep going. Just you can take it a little quicker than that. I know, I know how fast you normally go. That's why I said slowly, but keep on going. Because all I'm doing is just trying to get a sense of how developed that is. And that's exactly what I thought I remembered seeing. That largely, a lot of this is already developed. There are a few areas, but so much of it already has a lot going on. Even with the, well, that's too close. There you go.
And then as you come around here, you have this is Pleasance Landing over here.
Even with the larger parcels, it's there are very few that aren't developed in there. So, yeah. I think when I think of things, your phraseology, sense of community, sense of place. I mean, sense of community from the standpoint of Lake Anna, I agree with. And maybe I don't understand the terms entirely, but if we're trying to think of real small scale kind of neighborhood stuff, this stuff's way too sprawled out. So any kind of, I agree we want to stay away from, I like the way a lot of this is phrased, we want to stay away from a lot of just commercial strip development. We want to have a little bit better looking kind of commercial development through there. But, most people that are a part of the lake there, I don't think it's going to be any kind of walkable thing, and I don't think it's going to be, we want it to be attractive, and again, particularly that corridor down 208, minimize driveways on that to the extent possible, because there's already so many interconnections on that right now. I don't know if we can or not, but to whatever extent we can do it, we should be doing that.
And staff does, when we talk to prospective users of these parcels that are commercial industrial, we do work with them to encourage them to leave that ability to do it. And for the most part, they're very receptive because, again, they want people to go from one business to another and not just drive out on the road and leave. So,
Yeah.
and then I'd be remiss to also mention we have a very small piece of pink up here as well, by Tim's of the Lake and Boardwalk Hotel and a couple other users in there.
Yeah. I'm
All right.
largely good with that, yeah.
All right, well then, moving on away from the lake to Zion's Crossroad. Back to 64. So I think we're all very well versed with Zion's Crossroad over the years. The map that you see here is from the 2022 Zion Crossroad Small Area Study Plan that was between Flavanna, Louisa, and the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. You can see there's a suggestion to have interparcel connectivity due to the congestion that's out there and the planning or developments that have not been developed that have been approved in around 2019, 2020. And also we have, as a county, been requesting through SmartScale for at least the last 3 rounds of submission for around about a 250 and 15. And then you see a lot of similar characteristics as Lake Anna and mainly Gordonsville have, because this growth area is actually shared between 2 election districts. It's shared between Green Springs election district and the Patrick Henry. So going down here, as I mentioned earlier, Ferncliff has this swath of commercial designation in the future land use map, and then it segues into mixed use, heading up into Poindexter, and then we get to 250, come on over. It's majority of it's going to be low density residential or mixed use, and kind of similar to what Chairman Disasway was mentioning is that the low density residential portion, as you can see, is fairly well built out in this area. There might be a couple of parcels that are zone A2 that don't have single family houses on them. And then you can see, I'll go ahead and switch the layer from future land use map to zoning so that you can see the RD, this is Spring Creek. A lot of agricultural, and then you have your C2 commercial, your brown is your industrial, and your red is your planning and developments. And this is the Ferncliff, we have 2 business parks. We have one here, and we have one here on the other side of the interstate.
Mr. Chairman, a couple comments.
Mr. Dickerson, yes.
Definitely the VDOT Park and Ride needs expansion. I'm glad to see that in there. It's full quite often, and you can't put another car in there. And then Commissioner Brooks, I want to commend you for something you had in yours that I'd like to borrow or steal, whichever I have to do. But you had the comment that future developers are expected to participate in transportation solutions. And I'd like to see that added to our transportation plan in Zion Crossroads as well, because we know that needs some help.
That could probably be a part of several of these.
Tom came up with that good idea. I was just had a concern. He came up
Thank
with
you,
a solution.
I know you motivated him.
Why don't we start with that in every one of them? And if we don't have to have any transportation solutions, it won't be burdensome.
I'm happy to copy and paste into all 7 growth
Good
areas.
idea.
And again, one of the big goals out of going over this evening is this is a first draft.
Yeah.
And so I know we're looking at it together as a group for the first time. Happy to add things, delete things, modify things to help you do your job, to guide developers for what it is your constituents are looking for in those areas. And I will say, there's probably a lot more talk about planning and development in this focus area than the others, simply because there has been so many planning and developments that have been gone through. Anything else? Obviously, I'm sure we could get some input from Commissioner Quarles in the next meeting he attends to. Is there anything else that y'all would like to talk about on this one before we move on?
Let's move on.
I'll holler.
Mineral.
Mineral.
Back to the chairman. Oh, and Commissioner Kersey as well.
One thing, Mr. Eglin, as you get this set up, as soon as you get this set up, do you still have the comprehensive plan?
I do.
Definition things. Just hold that for just a moment. If
Absolutely.
you can expand that blue box just a little bit more,
Be
because
happy
my
to.
eyes are just not that good.
Same.
So just, okay, hold up right there. Yeah, so we don't actually define medium and high density here for residential for mixed use, but it's got to be something more than one dwelling per 2 acres. So it would be on the scale of at least 1.5 acres per dwelling for single family, or moving into like apartment condominium, that sort of thing. So, okay. Good, thank you. I
Welcome.
just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Sorry about that. I got too many tabs open. Let's see. With future land use map here, I'll bump it up a little bit.
And again, if you would just kind of zoom in on the low-density residential area around it, I'm trying to get a sense of how well-developed it is, and how, a little bit more as you zoom in.
I might have to zoom in on the northern side and southern side separate.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Just, yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of the way the lots are structured, and you can just kind of pull it on around here. So, yeah. So in this one, you move away from the streets and you got a lot of space. It's undeveloped. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in reading through this, I mean, I like a lot of what you have here. I agree with a lot of what you have here. I mean, my whole sense of the thing is Mineral is a nice small town right now, but Mineral needs some things to make it a nicer small town probably. And I think my sense of it is that whatever we do here, we should wind up with a walkable town to the extent possible. We should have some more light commercial services around, so there are more choices for things like nice, small, local kind of restaurants, shops, and maybe food purchasing, prepared or unprepared. And just some of the kind of businesses that support some of the small town stuff. I made up a list here out of the, I'll leave for you, Tom, out of the uses that just strikes me as the types of uses that would support a small town atmosphere, that you could, and give people most of the services that they would need to live in a small town and not necessarily have to drive all over the place, but they could if they wanted to. But we should, whatever development we do around there, we should do it such that we extend the sidewalk network into those sort of things. And we do have traffic as an issue, so it'd be good to reduce the amount of traffic and to have whatever roadway connections make sense. I mean, you got a pretty good grid network there, but as you move out around the area around Mineral, should, to the extent possible, I think encourage, if you need to go somewhere, you're going somewhere around the town as opposed to through the town necessarily. I don't know how that's possible, but I'm giving you ideas because I know you have a great way of taking those ideas and putting them into the proper phraseology that makes sense, because I don't have the phraseology. But I do think part of looking down the road is looking at the size of this low-density residential, because this is right in the middle of the county, and I think in order to keep this from becoming insanely developed, a future action needs to be looking at making sense of that low-density residential area and the mixed-use area there, because that could be a phenomenal number of residences, and what we would be doing, aside from creating a greater difficulty between Mineral and Louisa on 22 there, and jamming up 522 through town, is we would be creating a tremendously larger demand for services that we're not going to provide if we do all that in residential, but we're not getting the commercial. So I think, I don't know, Commissioner Kersey, if you agree or not, but I think a future look at this, not something for tonight. I mean, I'm telling you what I think the thing ought to look like for a small town tonight. It should have the sense of a small town, the feel of a small town, and the ability to get around like a small town. But to support that, as next steps, we ought to look at trimming that low-density residential area and maybe making a change to how that mixed use is done, because medium to high-density residential through there, you're going to create such a constriction on services and transportation if you dump hundreds and hundreds of people in that area. The Mineral itself is attempting to do that, but I don't know that the county wants to pile on here. But Mr. Kersey, what do you think?
I think that your questions are reasonable. I think the same applies around the town of Louisa. And you question the designation of the development. I really think that points us to that probably the county needs to look at minimum lot size. I know it's been discussed over the years, but I'm not sure that 1.5 acres is large enough. If we truly want it to remain rural, we're just going to pack folks around these towns and demand services, and we're experiencing what that is like in tax increases and the burden that's placed upon taxpayers. So I think it's a reasonable question you have.
Thank you. So I guess, Mr. Eglin, notes for future work then, at least from the standpoint of town and Mineral, or not town, I'm sorry, Mineral focus area, we would request, or I would request that we look at those two, the mixed use and the low-density residential around that, to see what we should consider doing with that.
Mr. Chairman.
Which I know is not popular, but anyhow, Mr. Kersey.
Do we have any statistics that would indicate to us how much low-density residential lots we could potentially get countywide with what we're designating here?
That would be an excellent question, what the maximum
Well, I
number
mean,
of
that's
lots
going
we
to tell
could-
you what your potential growth is.
Yes.
That's going to drive your taxes, and I think we really have to study that issue carefully.
We could work with our GA. Sorry, we could work with our GIS coordinator to see if we can get you something for the next meeting around the towns, correct? It like within the growth areas.
I'd like to see it countywide, all of these growth areas.
Yeah, what are we talking about if we turn this thing loose completely? It's an excellent question. And it does, I mean, and I know there's concerns, there's always concerns when you make a change to a map like this. And we can't make the change now, we're not asking for the change now, we're saying this is future work. But the comprehensive plan was produced over a long period of time with a number of public meetings. And once it was produced in draft form, it went back to a citizen committee for review as well. And then it was voted on in 2 public hearings. So there was a whopping amount of community input put into it. And the community said the number one goal is to maintain the rural character of the county. So if that's really what the community's goal is, then we should be informing our decisions with that sort of thing so that we're not maybe leaning one way or another with 1 or 2 individuals' concerns. We're considering what the county has asked for as a whole. And if we don't look at what the impact of the county as a whole is, then we're probably not going to have all the information we need. So, yeah, thank you, not necessarily for next meeting, but as we move into the process
Understood.
of considering what to do, which I think is the next logical thing to do, is to look at what to do with these land use maps and such, then it will help us to understand. I think the board as well, Mr. Barlow, I'm not going to speak for the board, but conversation I've had with some of the board members, I think the board has some concern about what the potential future growth could be as well. So it would be good to have that information, not only for us, but for the board. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kersey, if I've stated your concern correctly.
I appreciate that.
Certainly.
So, moving down the road, we'll swing by the Cook Rail Business Park, which has a conditional use permit for a solar facility. And we'll go by School Bus Road, which is a built solar facility, by the airport park and into the town of Louisa. A lot of the same things, if not very the same, with the characteristics. Walkable network. You see something similar. We saw large regionally sized businesses should help mitigate impacts, which is part of our public facilities section. Solar being encouraged in areas that already have impervious surface, so that we are not eating into any agricultural areas that are being used for that purpose at this time. And promoting agritourism. We have a lot of agricultural tourism businesses here. We have, I would consider regional, national, and local regional businesses within the town that support agricultural. And Commissioner Kersey, what comments would you like to add?
I don't have anything to add. I met with you. I think it covers it. I do think we have to look at that residential portion of the package.
Understood.
The town has already taken their own actions to, what I'm told, to double the size of the town. So I don't think that the county wants to add to it in such a way that it'll create situations we can't manage very well.
It's very similar to mineral, because you have some agriculturally zoned parcels that are within the future land use map designated for low density residential, but there is I would think, a lot more R2 in this area, and we'll pull it on that to double check. So there is more residentially, the purple here, R2 zoned. All right, well, moving on. I think we're running out of focus areas. I think we ran out of focus areas.
You got that, Tom.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you this evening about it. Chairman and members of the commission, would you like to bring this up as a work session item again on the next meeting to continue discussing, or a work group, or how would you like to continue working on these?
Why don't we bring this forward as a work session item for next time as well? I don't know what else we're going to have for work session, but we've proven we can carry it along month by month before. But at least we can have it in the package so we can review any changes and
Okay.
think about it. And I would encourage anyone who has further comments for Mr. Eglin to reach out individually, and I think we can maybe move these on. What would be the next step for these? If, supposing we said we're happy with this the way it is, what would be the next step for these?
The next step would be to, as we did earlier in the meeting, motion to vote to bring it to a public hearing.
So let's do this. Let's, because we don't have Mr. Quarles and Mr. Goodwin tonight, let's bring it back for work session next month. Give them a chance to comment on as well, and if everybody's happy, then by next month, I don't see a reason why we probably couldn't go to a motion to public hearing,
Yes, sir.
unless anybody feels like they need more work and more time, but that's just kind of a plan moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, would like to have that information we requested on the potential growth in the residential areas.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
would like to have that before we would move forward. I
All right.
would.
Would you like to have that prior to the next meeting or at the next meeting?
At the next meeting is fine.
Is that acceptable to everyone? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if we can have that at the next meeting.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eglin, for your patience.
My pleasure.
All right, next item up is ordinance amendment phase 3. Ms. Buckler.
Can you hand these out?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, good evening, and what we have here is a very, very rough draft of the next phase of amendments that we've been working through and looking at, and along with some of the other amendments that have been talked about. These will probably need a lot more discussion, more work session, review by legal, because I was out for a little bit sick, so I didn't get them out as fast as I had anticipated, to give you all more time to look at them, and for legal and county administration to review them. And what we've handed out, I'll talk about in just a few minutes, but I'll run through just the memo really quickly, and then we can just kind of scan through the individual amendments. So in the definitions, we've deleted buffering and screening yard only because we previously added a definition in phase 2, I believe it was, of vegetated buffers. We amended the definition for division parcel. We amended emergency shelter. We added an off-grid construction for residential. We amended private lane, religious assembly, residue or residue parcel or lot, subdivision, and vegetative buffer. For short-term rental of a dwelling, this is just some cleanup items. We added the resort development zoning district as having to meet the criteria, and we corrected the effective date of the original ordinance. For yard regulations in the A2 district, we removed the increased setback for other permitted structures greater than 50 feet in height. For the number 4, provisions for subdivisions in the A2 zoning district, and we will talk about this a little bit. Currently, the ordinance allows for a density bonus of 3 additional lots if they are designated for affordable housing purposes. We have removed that from staff. It's the Planning Commission and the board, if you all have other thoughts about that. We've had one project that went through this process when it was first adopted. For their 3 lots, they created a document, and eventually they sold those lots to the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation. we have now been getting more inquiries about the density bonuses, and we have one subdivision that's in the process that is working to obtain those 3 additional lots for the affordable housing density bonus. At the time this ordinance was originally adopted, there was an affordable housing committee that met and they could meet with and talk to. We no longer have that affordable housing committee, if I'm correct. I don't think it's been reestablished. It was disbanded quite a while back. So what we're running into is the developer is asking the county how we are going to enforce this density bonus, and our response has been, if you want the density bonus, it's yours that you need to enforce. You need to come up with the mechanism and present to us how you are going to meet that requirement. Like I said, we've only had one in probably the 20 years, plus or minus a little, that this has been on the books. But we have gotten more inquiries, one that is actively pursuing it now, and we're trying to work with them through that process. But they want us to enforce their density bonus. So, like I said, we've put this in there just because it's something that we haven't seen utilized very much, and we currently don't have any provisions in place or guidelines of how to make this work. What do we tell these developers? This is what they need to do. Under subdivision plat requirements and standards, we've included language to require submittal of a performance agreement for new subdivisions that would require completion of improvements within a set time. Going forward, there wouldn't be these developments that sit out here for 10, 15 years that aren't completed. They would have to complete them within a certain amount of time. They would have that the county has, we've added language that clarifies that the county has no obligation to install or maintain any improvements or roads that are part of a subdivision development, and that is based on language in the State Code of Virginia. It permits a maximum of 2 private lanes to be used in a subdivision development, and requires that the security or guarantee posted with the county be renewed and is reviewed every 24 months to ensure that there are sufficient funds remain in place for the project completion. Under plat approvals, we are proposing to add language that requires the private road disclosure state language be included on all subdivision plats that indicates that roads are private until such time as they have been accepted into the state secondary road system, so that if they never get taken into the state system, it is clearly on the plats that those roads are private. The plats will also be required to include a note that an entrance permit must be obtained from VDOT for access to each lot shown on the subdivision plat. Under the,
Ms. Buckler, just a
Yep.
moment. Mr. Barlow.
What we have been doing, in conjunction with Linda, and I realize we're looking at the subdivision plat requirements, but then when we go down to plat approvals, is this solely for subdivision? And the reason I ask is, we're putting these notes on all plats that have, private roads.
right, that we're not changing. We're just adding that they're now going to be on all subdivision plats with new internal roads.
Okay.
That road gives the private road disclosure language until it's accepted into the state system.
So that's for roads that are intended to go to the state system?
Correct.
That's fine. I just want to make sure, because I think it's because of the request we've had to take over roads and stuff. These notes that she's talking about is something that needs to go on every private road. So we've already got those notes
It's already in the ordinance that requires it on the plats we put them on now, like the private lanes, the family subdivisions, that sort of thing, the estate divisions. This would now require it to also be on subdivision plats where the intention is that the road will be taken over by the state. But just so that if we get into any situations where we're putting in so many different safeguards between the performance agreement, reviewing the security every 2 years, and the notes on the plats, just to try to prevent situations where lot owners buy on these roads, for some reason they don't get completed, and they want the county to finish them, complete them, maintain them. We want to make sure that the message is there, that these are private roads. This is how they're going to be unless the state takes them in. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Okay.
I've got it.
Under Lake Anna Shoreline Use and Design Standards, you all have heard a gentleman speak several times here about the requirement for dry hydrants and restroom facilities. And so what we've done is just clarified and added language that these would only be required if the Department of Fire and EMS or the Virginia Department of Health in their respective roles required the facilities based on their regulations or their requirements. It would not be a requirement of the county under the shoreline regulations, but if the health department under the marina regulations, if it met that criteria and it required a restroom, then they could require the restroom, but it would not be the county. So we've taken that part out. Under telecommunication regulations, I have one thing here. I'll let Tom address another item that has come up. But this, what is in this package clarifies that generators may be located on site, but only operated during power outages or testing. Right now, it says that generators can't be on site, and just about every tower has a generator on site for the purposes listed. So we wanted to just clean that up. Sign regulations, we were at one of the board meetings, it was brought up about electric message signs. We do have provisions in our regulations now that require them to be dark sky compliant, but we have added some language to strengthen the electric message or illuminated signs, and we've looked at other localities when putting this together, and have come up with some percentages and at nighttime, but we can put hours between certain hours if it's your all's choice. But just these are, like I said, are in very draft form to begin some discussions on these things. And item 10. We included for your information the current interim road maintenance agreement that we use right now for subdivisions when the roads are intended to be taken in to the state system. And there's a draft subdivision performance agreement that was drafted quite a few years ago, so it probably needs some updating, probably needs a lot of legal review, but it, again, is just a draft to get us talking about these processes and how we would implement them in the subdivision ordinance. And that's the memo. We can go through any of the items specifically. Like I said, I apologize. I had intended to get them out in advance of the package, but unfortunately, I just couldn't make that happen this time.
I did have one question. Ms. Smith, I was going to give you a heads up ahead of time, but I was unable to reach you all through the phone system, and there was no answering machine or whatever. So if you look at it's packet page 28, these are the definition changes. This is the definition for religious assembly. The addition here says a religious assembly may operate an emergency shelter as defined in this section for the duration of a state or locally declared state of emergency without benefit of a CUP. I just wanted to ask the question for clarification. I can't imagine that there would be an impact, but considering this is zoning type ordinance, but is there any way that this statement may run afoul of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act? I don't know, but I thought I'd ask because it's just a little bit more than zoning kind of thing, since it's talking more about how you operate the thing or when you operate the thing. So it allows the operation, but at certain times, I don't know whether there's an impact there. My sense is probably not, but I'd rather ask someone who knows better.
Mr. Chairman, I can certainly
Thank
look
you.
into that and get an answer.
Thank you, I appreciate that, yeah. So, and I didn't want to surprise you tonight, but I wasn't able to reach you, so
Okay.
at the next meeting is fine,
Okay.
yeah. How would anyone like to proceed? Is there anything in particular that we can go item by item, or if there's an individual thing, we can go directly there?
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brooks, go ahead.
While you're on page 28, the private lanes, down the third sentence, it says, private lanes are restricted as to the hours of access by the public or by those who may use it and are maintained by the association. The way I'm reading that, it's a time limit on when we can get on the road. How do you enforce that, or monitor that, or require that?
That is the current language
Really?
of the definition. Mr. Barlow may help to jog my memory a little bit as to why that is in there like that.
So this is what's there now with no changes at this point.
Right, the only change in the definition to private lane is in the very first line. We are removing in divisions of and
Okay.
adding serving.
Okay, all right. Well, Mr. Barlow?
Got a couple of comments, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barlow, yes.
And that sentence you just asked, Mr. Brooks, is something that has been in the ordinance. It came about because of a definition difference between private and public, which I believe was a VDOT, original VDOT definition, which had to do with heirs and stuff. Now would be a real good time to clean that up, take it out, because it makes no sense.
Yeah, I second that.
In reading this, where we have and I realize this is draft amendments, but under the division parcel, and maybe mine's the only one that
Page
says this.
27.
Yeah, on page 27, the minimum of 4,300 feet.
Well, it is actually a strike-through line in the 4, but it hits right where the
Oh, okay.
4. I knew that was going to be a question because we
Was
looked
that a
at
problem?
it.
Difference.
I'm just saying, well, maybe I missed something here.
We looked at that. I tried to look at other ways to strike it, but it struck.
So that, it reduced from 400 to 300.
Right. This is after our meeting. We took out that the residue parcel has to have 5 acres and a minimum of 400 feet, and that has been revised to the residue parcel has 5 acres or more or a minimum of 300 feet. So we took out the and, made it an or.
And the keeping the 300 feet is in line with our requirement of 200-foot lots.
And the third having to have
Yeah,
300
so-
feet.
I
right
think
now.
it's fine. I just read that and saw, I was reading 4,300.
And it's the same thing in the, next to the last line, that is 5 acres or more, or has a minimum of 300 feet of existing state road frontage. It does look like 4,300, but that is a strike
I had
through.
highlighted 4,300 in every one of them. So that clears that up. That, I think, gets across the original intent. Where we had that 5 acres and 400 feet of frontage was originally put in there to clarify that if you had that on a residual portion, you didn't have to do the right-of-way dedication. So if you had 100 acres and you had 5 acres and 400 feet of frontage, you only had to dedicate across the 2 division parcels. So I think this clears that up. And now if you have a tract of land, for instance, if it had 9 acres, you could get 3 lots out of it, so to speak, as long as that third one had 5 acres and 300 feet of frontage, which was the original intent anyway. You got 2 lots, 2 division parcels and the residual, but because of that wording that we put in there requiring the dedication or not requiring it, it got construed to be that your final lot, the residual, had to have 5 acres and 400 feet of frontage. So I think this clarifies that. Makes it so it's something usable.
Question to that, Linda. As I read this, I'm guessing I'm in a A2 when I say it's a minimum, the residual's a minimum of 5 acres, then we could have 2 more lots at 1.5 acres apiece. Is that the way this,
I'm a visual person, so I would have to,
I'm trying to, it's, how does it read?
That would be right.
thank you.
It's, the way I read it, you need a 8-acre parcel before you can get a residual and 2 lots.
Right. Yeah, and you'd have to have at least that.
At least that, maybe more if you got dedicated right away
Right.
off of it. So if it was a situation that this was in R zoning, R2 say, is there any issue with this not being designated in A2 versus R?
The division, does the division survey even apply in other districts?
You know,
Why not?
Yeah.
but if it was in R, it's the same restriction, it'd be basically a 8-acre minimum at the least.
Right, and and we have taken out the and, so it's 5 acres or more, or has a minimum of 300 feet of road frontage. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be an 8-acre parcel as long as that third parcel had at least 300 feet of road frontage.
And
It-
that 3 acres and 300 foot of road frontage
We took
and
out
5
the,
acres of land.
we took out the and made it an or.
Or.
They don't have to have both
Okay,
now, it's
okay.
one or the other for
Okay.
it to be a residue.
No, all right, okay, all right, that answers that question.
The 300 actually, when I was thinking about it, was in conjunction with the A2, where you have to have 2 lots of 200, which is the minimum. So you could have those 2 lots, and then the third one by our A2 zone has to be 300 feet. So that fell right in line with this, but if it also applies to the R2 zones,
Well, it applied previously as well, so for it to be a residue, it had to have either 5 acres, it had to 5 acres and 400 feet of frontage, so it reduced that residue requirement for the other zoning districts as well.
I think this allows you to get the 3 lots, which was the original intent. regardless whether you're in R2 or the A2.
All right, okay. I just wanted to confirm that. I think I answered one of my own questions later on in the interim road maintenance agreement. So I'm not even gonna take your time up with it. Same thing for subdivision agreement. That's all I got right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
I will point out, with the definition of division, the definition of residue or residue parcel or lot was changed to reflect the same changes that were put into division parcel. And in addition, we took out the requirement for a VDOT-approved access because it was in one place and not in the other definition.
That's out of both,
It's out of both.
right, which was a problem before because the analogy I gave George, Mr. Goodman, was, if he were to cut out two lots and the third parcel had a residue and it was his driveway, the likelihood of that residual piece having a VDOT approved entrance is virtually none. None of the residue parcels, they may have an entrance, but it was not a VDOT approved entrance. So it was, everywhere you turn, we were having conflicts with that as well.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions, particular questions, as we go through this?
So the sheet that Tom handed out when we first started this is based on a meeting that staff had today with VDOT. This was a directive from the board for staff to look at removing VDOT from the subdivision review process. But we've met with them today. We'll be meeting with board members, 2x2s, I believe it is, what they've talked about so far in the next couple of weeks. But we wanted to bring this along with the changes that we already have proposed for 86-567, which is in your package on page 33. And then with the handout, so recently, I believe it was in the Phase 1 amendments, we added that subdivision streets would be reviewed by a third-party firm. We've taken that out. This is on the handout that Tom put at your seats, to an engineer licensed in Virginia. And item 4A, 4D, we remove third party, and E, we remove by third-party engineer.
Where are you?
This is on- in the handout that, yeah.
I'm looking at that. But that's not in your draft.
Right, this just happened today after a meeting with VDOT, so that was not in the package that was sent out. And this is going to be discussed more and in individual before we go further with all of this, but that's what came out of today's
Okay.
meeting with VDOT.
Two comments, one of which Linda beat me to it. Because of problems we've been having with VDOT reviewing subdivisions, plans, what have you. This is one I can explain to you coming to the planning commission.
Good.
I can,
Do so.
because I've headed it in that direction. We have on all of our subdivision plats a signature block for VDOT sign off on. Here of late, they've decided they're no longer doing that. We have the emails from them, Mr. Thornton cited Office of Attorney General ruling that they should no longer be signing off on plats. So, what has happened is, we've been sending them plats that they will not sign off on. So, if they're not gonna sign off on it, or not gonna, the last one I had, there were arbitrary decisions made as to where the driveway should go. When nobody went to the field or went out, there was no review. One of the locations, there was a power pole sitting in the middle of where they wanted the driveway. Around on the other side, there was a 5-foot cut. When on 522, there were already 2 VDOT approved entrances, which they shifted away from both of those. So our thought at the board level was, if they're not gonna review them and they're not coming out to the field, then why should they be part of the review process? And have to send it to them for 45 days and then not be willing to sign off on the plat. So the other part of that, so I started putting on our plats that go to my office, a notation, which I believe, Linda, you've got in here, that notes any, our ordinance calls for the entrances to be shown, so that any entrance that's shown ultimately has to be approved by VDOT at the time the entrance application is made. So that, and that's when they will look at it and sign off on it. What I'm, right now, our ordinance currently says they have to go to VDOT for review and approval, and they're not doing that. So that's the reason this is being sent to the Planning Commission to look at revising our ordinance requirement. Certainly, we've got to change something in it, because if they're not going to sign off on it, then what's the point in having it as part of the review process? And I do think that, just like Linda has suggested here, we do add that notation that the entrances will be approved at the time the entrance application is made to VDOT, and then they can sign off on it. But it's, if they're not going to review them, then why does it need to be part of our process? And that's why it's coming to you. So this one you know about.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So, and I'm not sure if Chris is still here, I just texted him, yep, here he comes, from the meeting today. So some of the information that came from our meeting today with VDOT, and I may have to look at the preliminary and final plat requirements and remove the requirement that you show the entrance locations. But what it was suggested by VDOT during our meeting today was to not show the entrances and to have that note on the plat because of the recent issues with the entrances. And that would take care of that issue, correct?
And if I may,
Please.
that may be a very good way of doing it, because that way we're not putting something on the plat that, ultimately, if they have to approve the plat, then that doesn't put the county in a position of having approved something that conceivably they may not approve. But what really was frustrating is we had to get VDOT approval when they wouldn't come out and look at it. And so now, I think what they may very well have, just don't show an entrance at all, and it'll be taken care of at the time the entrance permit is applied for. That may be a very good way of putting it, and still put that note on the plat
Right,
that says that's when the entrance will be approved.
right.
So, so This is a question. If that's the case, then it would no longer go to VDOT for approval?
The plats would still go to VDOT for the concurrence, which is what they are giving us now. So in the last couple of years, rather than giving us an approval or signing the plats, they give us a concurrence letter. And from that concurrence letter, staff puts a note or label on the plat that it was sent to VDOT per the county regulations, per the county ordinance, and we received their concurrence letter on X date that it may proceed further towards recordation is the language that they use.
That may be what their response was to it, but it still sounds like, in other words, if we remove the entrances, which on these things, unless it's a state spec road they're reviewing, the entrances are all that they're looking at. So if we remove the entrances, why do we make it a requirement that it go to VDOT for approval, which they're not going to approve? I mean, they will, in other words, if the approval comes or the review comes at the time of the entrance permit, then I don't see the need for it to go to VDOT as part of the process, because that's 45 days right there.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that some more.
I mean, it's
as
just-
if there's any other part of a
Right.
review that they are doing for plat, if we remove the entrance locations.
Well, the notation on the plat says that VDOT is only approving the entrance. So that's what the note currently says by county ordinance. So if we remove the entrances, then they're not approving anything, but it's 45 days that they have, that it's going to them for. And if they're not approving it until the entrance permit is applied for, then I just don't see the need for it going to them. Okay. So now you know the whole story.
The whole story,
You said-
every bit of it.
I haven't gotten there.
Don't say you didn't know about this one then.
So another thing that, piece of information that VDOT passed along to us today, if it gets approved by the governor, is where the county currently has 10 days to transmit plans to the state agencies, we would now have 5, and instead of them having 45 days to review, they would only have 30.
Well, that's a help, but if they're not gonna review it anyway, what's the
Yeah.
point of them having 30? One more little thing, I said I had two. The other one was on my license, and surveyor's license, even B section, unless it gets into curb and gutter, which virtually none of our roads do, then surveyor can review or do the plans, do the road plans. So I think in our other section of the ordinance, that got changed years and years ago. It should be, if we're gonna do the third-party thing, that it should be a surveyor or engineer licensed in the state of Virginia.
Okay.
We don't wanna be cut out of work if it don't have to be.
Give all that money to an engineer.
Darn right.
That's right.
All right. Got that.
One question, Linda or Chris, one of my concerns is if the plat is done and we move on in the process, and then the plat gets recorded and VDOT, and nobody still hasn't applied for an entrance permit. And then we got 8 lots down here that's already been recorded. And then they go out and they say, well, y'all can't get no driveway on this lot because it doesn't have sight distance or whatever reason they come up with. Wonder how that battle's gonna play out. They're gonna say, well, the surveyor engineer didn't put it in the right place, so they shouldn't have done that. It kind of creates a little,
If there is a parcel that connects to a state road, VDOT cannot deny access to that
I've always
roadway.
heard that, but I've never put it to test.
And that is, what's the one section that we've gotten complaints about?
I had heard that, but I didn't believe it either. I can tell you what we do is,
Was that said today in the meeting?
And for
Which,
Philippi Church, there's an entrance.
Was that said today in the meeting?
the,
That
yes,
statement was?
that's VDOT cannot, if, once the parcel's established and someone wants to use it, they can't deny access.
Okay.
What they will do is they will look at the parcel, and let's say the surveyor or the person building on it wants to get it on the eastern side of the parcel. But VDOT looks at it and says, the best case scenario, we've got to go dead center because it meets as many sight distance to the left and right. That's where the entrance has to go. VDOT will say that.
So if that subdivision is done to county code, then they can't deny access.
That's what
That,
they
now
said.
if it's a situation where it can't meet sight distance on like either side, VDOT's gonna dictate where it goes.
Right.
So you might end up having some
Sure.
developmental issues if the surveyor or, they don't take that into consideration because, you've got just the bare minimum, lot frontage and then you put the drive aisle right smack dab in the middle. It might cause some problems, but that's basically what VDOT had said, is that they can't deny access and they will do their best to make it as safe as possible.
Be nice to have that somewhere in your back pocket if needed.
when we are laying these things out, I know what the required site distances are, and we try to get these done driveways, private lanes. I had to shift, you asked why I put one way the heck over on the corner of the property. And it was simply to get, or why I was even using a private lane. And it was simply to get the required sight distance. Well, we don't want people coming back at us because we laid out something that won't work. So we work pretty hard to make darn sure that what we got will be usable. But then my whole point in this is if VDOT is not going to come out, they're not going to do a review until the entrance permit is applied for, then I don't think they need to be part of the review process. If they're not going to review it, which I've got emails that you got them too, they're not reviewing. So anyway, it's another one, y'all, it's coming to the planning commission, look at it and give me some brilliant ideas how to get around it.
Yeah, there's going to be some more discussions on these issues, and like Chris said, we'll look into it and talk with VDOT about what their role is going to be if entrance locations
Yeah.
are not shown.
And this is not a change that Louisa County did.
Right.
This is a reaction to what is currently going on, and trying to figure out a way to address it. It has worked fine for the last 30 or 40 years, which that signature block has been on the plat for as long as I've been doing them. And that's worked great. VDOT's people, we would meet them in the field. We put the entrances at the best location. And so when it got to VDOT, it wasn't held up because they'd already reviewed it. But if you're no longer going to come out in the field to review it, you're not going to review them, then they simply don't need to be holding up things or be part of the review process if you're not going to review them. So that's why it's coming to the planning commission.
Very good. Any other questions from any of the planning commissioners on these?
Just one comment, Mr. Disler.
Mr. Brooks?
That clock up there is an hour slow.
I understand that. I understand that. I'm trying to accomplish work here rather than spend time, but one seems to
I just
cause
thought
the
to
other
let you
one.
know.
So we do have the one other, a change that I was gonna let Tom mention that came from our telecommunications consultant that is also not in the package that we just received today by email. But as I stated at the very beginning, these are very rough. And we are open to suggestions and, we will look into other, questions that you all have, but this is something to get the conversation started on these changes.
Very good. Well, it's certainly something that we'd like to see at the work session in April as well. And I think by then, had a little bit more time to digest this and think about it, we might have some better commentary.
And we'll incorporate the couple of changes that we've talked about and try to get more information from VDOT in advance of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, very well. No, Mr. Eglin, yes, please let us know what the telecommunication thing is.
Good evening again, Chairman and members of the commission. So recently, Louisa County switched consultants, and our new consultant has asked us to make a change to the telecommunication ordinance to help them provide a thorough review for either new cell phone towers, and in this case, mainly existing towers that are swapping out. So imagine this is your tower, and you have 4 RAD points, which we're very familiar with because we require in our conditional use permits at least 4 points for, let's say, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon, whoever to locate on. Well, there are some industry standards that require a telecommunication tower company to inspect their tower every 5 years. Now, when, let's say we have existing equipment or new equipment and we're putting it on a tower, the consultant would like to have in our code that a applicant is required to provide us that 5-year inspection report so that we're not relying on a structural analysis for each time a company swaps out their equipment that has assumptions in it based off of what the other company had done. One year one company does it, the next year another company, and then it changes the structural load of that tower every time. So we just got some drafted language. We've been working very diligently with our consultant who started to look at applications since we brought them on board, and we'll have that language to share with you. I have it, I can show it on the screen tonight, but we can make sure we put it in our work session for the next meeting so that you can review it. But that's essentially it. They want the ability to request a 5-year study to prove that a structural analysis for new equipment going on the tower, that we're not using the word assumption, that we can prove that the tower's been inspected and that it matches what the assumptions or non-assumptions are on the structural analysis. I've done a good job of explaining something kind of technical. So.
Do you have it handy, or
I
does it
do.
require a lot of manipulation?
I have it handy.
Let's just take a real quick look at some modifications to this. And what section would this be in our code?
Well, we haven't determined, it would be within the telecommunication, wireless communication section. We haven't
Fair
determined
enough.
what subsection.
So,
No, so we've been talking back and forth. There's been some talk about what the language would be, and this is the latest. But if you have any comments or questions, we can go back to the consultant and flush this out.
just a curious question, since there is a recommendation, I'm looking for, there it is. If you follow the standard, the ANSI TIA 222, it recommends inspection once every 5 years. Is there a requirement we have for structures, antenna structures in the county to meet the ANSI TIA 222?
Not at this time.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about who's doing the inspections and who's maintaining them right now. It's just-
Currently, when an application comes in, we get a structural analysis from the engineer for that company, and the issue we've been told by our consultant is it has the word assumption in it,
Yeah.
without that 5-year study.
I wonder if assumptions change over the 5 years.
I assume not.
But this would allow them to request, because it would be in our code, that information, and when the structural analysis would have to meet the requirements of this language as well.
Right. Think about that one. But look forward to seeing your updated language at the next meeting
Understood.
on that. Yes. Anyone have any further questions on the proposed amendment changes? Ordinance amendments, I'm sorry. Very well. Get back to, yes. I don't think we have anything else for tonight, unless anyone else has anything else for tonight.
So moved.
Mr. Eglin, apparently we may have something else for
We-
tonight.
We have one public hearing item?
Is it your birthday?
It is not.
Yeah, so but they were going to defer.
Have you signed my petition?
So we may have just one item for public hearing next month, which will probably be the item on drugs. So we'll have drugs will be a public hearing item for the next meeting, and then we can continue the work session for the focus areas and the ordinance work.
Very
Just a
good.
heads up. Thank you.
Sounds like we may be able to put more time in to finish up. Good. All right. If there's no other items for business tonight, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second.
That red pen.
I second myself.
I have a second. All right. We are.